Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe Weekly Podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. Our podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, hey, hey. Hey, nonny, nonny. It is me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all the details over at the website talkingjoe.co.uk. And while you're there, why not follow the links and give us some nice reviews? Or, if you've never reached out to us before, drop me an email. Say you're listening, enjoying the show. That is precisely what you've got to email, by the way. I don't really want anything deviating from that too much. And we've also got a Facebook group, so join in on the fun over there. But social media distractions aside, today we will be looking at G.I. Joe issue 285. And there is someone who is going to be doing it with me. It is the Ronnie Barker to my Ronnie Corbett. It's my co-host, a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
Woo, woo, woo. Good to have you back down the virtual line. Tim, feels like ages, probably because it has been ages.
Yes, for those of you listening to the show sort of at release date, there were some weeks without an issue, or someone was traveling, but it has felt like a long time. But I'm sitting in front of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, 285 A cover, B cover, and retailer incentive, and I have my clipboard with sparse notes.
The checklist. Is it good? Tick yes or no.
And I'm ready to talk about this comic. First, I have to just exclaim to the world, because this is one of the places I was looking forward to doing it. When last I spoke into this microphone for Talking Joe, my store, Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, near Boston, was still closed for renovations. We have reopened. We're back to 7 days a week. Things are normal. It's great. We still have a couple rolling changes for the fall. So in my mind, the renovation is, 92% done. But as far as customers coming in and buying things, it's done. It's great. Come see us, Hub Comics in Somerville, hubcomics.com, also Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Let's talk about G.I. Joe.
Well, excellent. Hub Comics, I was so excited. I went out and made a jingle for you, Tim. So it is as good a time as any to play it, I think.
All right.
Hub Comics, your local comic store. Hub Comics, in Boston to explore. Hub Comics, your local comic store. Hub Comics, comics and much more.
Hub Comics in Somerville, near Boston. Check out hubcomics.com for details.
Hub Comics.
So there you go. That was a thing.
And there's for those of you watching this, there's some light imagery involved in the video version of this Hub Comics jingle as well. For those of you only listening, you're missing a tiny little bit extra.
And so you had your soft reopening for Free Comics Books Day. Does that mean that there's a hard reopening to come?
No, that already happened.
That happened. You had a hard reopen.
Yeah, what was it? It was Monday Yeah, we've been open for a week and a half now.
And did what was involved in the official reopening as opposed to the soft one?
A piece of paper from the city that made the finishing of some municipal paperwork official.
There we go. In England, it would have been a ribbon. Snip.
There is a photo actually. So I took over. I bought Hub Comics in 2011, but the store opened in 2008, and there actually is a photo from early 2008 with the then owner, founder of the store, two people I don't know, and his manager, my manager, and the mayor of Somerville cutting a ribbon. In fact, this photo, it's in a little frame, used to hang on the wall behind the register so customers could see it. And it's been in a box at my home for the last year and a half. And I was just thinking a couple days ago I should put that back up behind the register area for people to see. But I also need to get a letterboard or a cork board or some movable shelving for that wall behind the register, so that we can, put up like $50 back issues, or like our pick of the week, or some random action figure if we happen to have an action figure for sale, because we don't really carry action figures. So before I put a small photo in a small frame on that wall, I need to this is one of those rolling changes I was talking about. Mm-hmm. There's some high space high up on the walls where we can have some art. So I want to figure out what art's going to go there in the store. We're waiting for an upholstered bench or two where we used to have couches. We're waiting for two small tables that you would see at a bookstore or a library to come in. Those are coming in October. Yes, soft opening, Free Comic Book Day, hard opening, which I called the grand reopening. But everyone's wearing masks. We didn't have food or drink. So it wasn't sort of the party that I was hoping it might be. But considering how the pandemic's going, the fact that we were open and lots of people came in was a major victory.
So now I've got to do some major remediation, because on the last ARAH issue, when we were talking about 285, I missed an I Spy, and Diana Davis pulled me up on my egregious I missed, I guess you would call it, if the opposite of I Spy. The pizza place that Al Kawbra frequented was called Vaffa Napoli, which literally translated means go to Naples. And I knew enough to know that, and I thought maybe that's a thing, but I didn't bother to actually double check, and I missed out that the slang meaning is Italian for go to hell.
While we're correcting ourselves from previous episodes, in a previous episode, when we were interviewing one of our wonderful guests about their art collection, we were referring to the original artwork to issue number 36, which is the Michael Golden painted cover with the Rattler, the Asp, and the hovercraft. And our guest was sort of recalling that this issue had been advertised on television, and it was not. And a couple times doing the dishes since then, I've thought, oh wait, we got that fact wrong. I should fix that in a future episode. But let's talk about G.I. Joe 285.
Comic talk, oh, comic talk. Larry Hama writes them, Tim and Mark discuss them, whoa. Comic talk, oh, comic talk. Larry Hama writes them, Tim and Mark discuss them, whoa.
Okay, so G.I. Joe 285 released 11th of August 2021, which is this year as we speak. Writer, Larry Hama. Artist, Andrew Lee Griffiths, with no S. Colour, Jay Brown. Letters, Neil Utaki. Senior editor, Tom Waltz. Editor, Megan Brown. Research specialist, Diana Davis. So this is part 5 of Murder by Assassination that we are on, and let's start by looking at the covers.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Cover A is the iconic 6 or 7 Joes with a flag motif and a flag. Just a pose for us. This calls to mind sort of the covers to yearbook 1 and 2 if they had a baby. Or maybe I should say this also sort of calls to mind Nitho Diaz's cover for the reprint of yearbook 1. Anyway,
and also the back cover to yearbook number 2, which features the October Guard in quite a similar pose.
Oh yeah.
So where you have Flint kneeling with Lady J on his right, you have one of the October Guards kneeling with Dana. To the right.
Good point. So Griffith does something subtle here. He's put the camera at about 3 feet. The camera's at about waist height. We're looking slightly up at Beachhead and Roadblock and Duke, and we're actually looking straight on at Flint and Lady J. So there's a little bit of a sense of power added to this because of that simple choice. I don't love the coloring. Just to sound like a broken record. Jay Brown does a lot of gradients and light sources that I find inconsistent and confusing. Like I don't know what the highlight on Duke's pants represent, and I don't know what this sort of purple reflected light on the right side of Roadblock's head is. But it's a fun cover. The thing actually that jumps out, there are 2 things that jump out the most to me about this cover. One, the logo is smaller than normal so that it doesn't, I think, crop the 2 Sky Strikers at the top. There's a lot more space on the left, and if you're looking at covers A and B and RI together, it's really clear. This logo's like 20 or 30% smaller. And number 2, it does not say Murder by Assassination at the bottom. And Untold Tales and The Cobra's Venom and Murder by Assassination, these story arcs or these umbrella titles from the last couple years, on the A covers, they're always there. And, this could be just a small oversight. I don't mind. I'm not confused or offended. But I do feel like it's symbolic, considering that this doesn't feel like part 5 of 5. It just feels like part 5. And we have lost the thread of the murder by the assassination, the titular murder by the titular assassination. And then, the last couple of covers have been so keen on putting Sherlock in the action. I'm a little disappointed that Sherlock isn't on this cover for 2 reasons. One, it's a spotlight for her and some new characters, and we've been seeing her on covers. And 2, more subtly, if you do this kind of iconic, or like hoping this will become an iconic G.I. Joe cover, like most popular Joes, 1 or 2 key vehicles, a flag motif, and it's just sort of a poster image. If you're gonna do this with Snake Eyes and Duke and Scarlet, why not? How much power there would be in putting Sherlock into this drawing, right? Like, take Beachhead out, or Lady J, and put Sherlock in. And but we've talked to artists about how far ahead of time they're doing covers, and it's very possible that even from a year ago, the scheduling nightmare that was the spring and summer of 2020 for artists, publishers, licensors, printers, distributors, that even figuring out the cover for this issue sort of when they needed to called for more than normal, not quite knowing what the issue would be, called for sort of either whatever image was on hand or a generic image.
Sure.
Cover B is the fifth of 5 interlocking covers drawn by Freddie Williams II and colored by Andrew Dalhouse. And I think even more than the last 4, I'm really aware of this cover that really is screaming to be seen in a horizontal image with its 4 counterparts, and seeing it all by itself. It's a good drawing. It's not a great composition, and it's not at all a satisfying cover, right? It's cool to see Gung Ho punching a Kobra soldier, but there's this very strange abstract shape just to the left of his fist, which sort of now I can see is a bat who's half cropped out because, there's a division. And then, you have all this, I've said this in a previous episode, you have all this negative space because this was drawn as a 5 images together. And if you were to just make a cover on its own of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters, you would compose it very differently.
Yep, indeed.
Also, the Crimson Guardsman is really beefed up.
And he's flying through the air like a ninja.
And Chuckles is wearing shorts, which I kind of like. He's got what looks like an Uzi. Who's under Storm Shadow?
Well, yeah, I was about to ask you the same thing. It looks like maybe the guy's horror show.
I thought it was Mutt.
Ooh, could be.
Who's the lady?
The lady.
So I can't tell if the costume is supposed to be gray or black, and sort of atmospherically to like push her back, it's colored as sort of a gray purple. But she has dark hair, and it sort of looks like the Baroness. The Baroness's weapon.
Yeah, skin color unclear.
I can't quite tell who that is.
Yeah, don't know. Really don't know.
So that's a fun puzzle. I think as a general rule, with characters as clearly delineated, we should know who this is. The person should be a little closer or have something more carefully drawn or colored about her, so we know exactly who it is. I sort of wonder if it's she's not quite wearing boots. She looks sort of like she's wearing like scuba. Her feet look sort of. But then I'm thinking, well, maybe she's under Storm Shadow. Maybe it's a ninja, and I don't have the other 4 covers in front of me. Maybe it's Jinx. I don't know. And the Alley Viper is missing its blue urban camo.
Yeah.
Alley Viper is
paired right back to the orange, really.
Yeah. So, this cover doesn't do much for me. I like the ingredients. I don't like how it all comes together. Retailer incentive cover is drawn by Julie Anderson, and maybe my co-host can figure out who Julie Anderson is while I talk about this cover. So this is just a single shot of Sherlock, who is knee deep in a swamp, and there's can't quite tell what it is behind her on the right. Looks sort of like a hut made out of thatched grass or reeds. Looks a little bit like smoke, like a giant like bale of hay, but based on context, I think it's some kind of like the side of a house or a hut. There's a really bright white line which separates Sherlock on the left from the background, which I think is overdone. And I think about this a lot in comics. When you have a character or an object that's black, right? It could just be something in shadow, or it could be Spider-Man in his black costume, and you have them against something that is black, like a shadow or the night sky. Do you ink the black all the way to the black, or this comes up a lot in Batman comics, or do you leave a thin sort of halo around them? And if you leave a thin halo, does the colorist then color that in some a green color, something neutral like gray, or leave it stark white? And I think the white is a little too much here. I like this cover, but Sherlock's eyes aren't quite focused on anything in particular. She looks like she's sort of staring like 7 feet diagonally down in front of her, like not at her gun, not at someone she might be drawing her gun on, not at us. So if I could change one little thing about this cover, it would be how her eyes are focusing. But Julie Anderson, not someone who has drawn G.I. Joe covers before. Mark?
Yeah, I'm assuming that she is Julie M. Anderson, Art of Julie A on Twitter. Julie Anderson showcases diversity in uncommon themes that emphasize strong women in fantasy and sci-fi settings. Her inspirations from childhood can be seen in her art via a fusion of Japanese and Afro-American themes that she persistently uses today. So presumably, I think a relatively new artist and selected, I guess, for the, to highlight this new character, Sherlock.
I'm looking at what I think is juliemanderson.weebly.com at the portfolio here, and I think this is the same artist, and it's I'm not seeing sequential comics work or covers. I'm seeing illustration and pinups, so I wonder if this is Julie Anderson's first comics work.
Could well be.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to say definitively this is that person because, well, I'm looking at the signature on the cover and the signature on the website, and they look pretty similar. Anyway.
Yeah, I think chiming in with you, sort of not really for me. This one, looks like a first pass. To be honest, there's a lot being lost in the contrasting colors, the sort of the dark of the water versus the very dark shading of the left hand side of the costume, the sort of the big striking kind of, I don't know, thatched building, wherever it is, that it's not really clear what it is, and it's sort of losing a lot on the right hand side. Very strong highlights around most of the objects all coming together. It's I don't think it's necessarily my favorite.
I think this is one of those covers where it looks better on the monitor where it was colored, and I think it was colored with monitors in mind, and when it gets printed the colors get a little muddy. I think this was colored a little too dark for print. Sherlock does pop out, but not very much.
Right, so with the covers all thoroughly looked at, let's get on to a plot breakdown and find out what happens inside. In the jungle of Mara Wapor in Southeast Asia, the G.I. Joe team of Muskrat, Falcon, Wetsuit, Multo, Sherlock, Rock'n'Roll, and Recoil are on the tail of Al Kawbra, who is holed up in a former industrial park. The site looks quiet, almost too quiet. As the Joes make their move, they are shot at from the towers. A ferret and a stinger launch an attack also. They discover that the Cobra troops are bats, and so they didn't give off heat signatures. The bats, led by Overkill, are overwhelmed by the Joes. Overkill makes his escape in an aspid with a container full of specialised construction bats. Meanwhile, Sherlock stops Al Kawbra's escape and unmasks him to reveal that he has the face of a Fred series Crimson Guard. In the punch-up, Sherlock catches his fist in her robotic hand and crushes it. We are left with the mystery as to exactly what the Cobra conspiracy was all about. So, talking points. Tim, do you want to start?
Sure. I love the opening scene because it feels quintessentially G.I. Joe. It feels like, the flashbacks to the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol group in Vietnam. It feels like an issue of Special Missions. We've got, 7 Joes, almost all in green, in the jungle, doing, soldier in the jungle kind of things. And they come across a building and they have to go in, and then there's a fight. So that's very exciting. It's also great to see some characters we haven't seen in a long time. I couldn't tell you when Recoil has had dialogue in an issue of G.I. Joe.
Infrequently, yeah.
Wetsuit is in a costume that makes sense for him. It's always fun to see a mixture of old and new, rock and roll from year 1, but also Sherlock from year 39. Some Joes in the middle, Falcon and such. I like this little bit of tech that they have in this opening scene, which is something like a tablet. I love that there are some old vehicles, a Stinger and a Ferret, and that they get used specifically, like we need one of them to fire missiles, Stinger, and clearly the Ferret's going to be able to do some terrain, some driving over terrain. I was a little confused why the Joes, maybe I'm over reading into this, but the Joes seemed surprised that there were bats in this base.
Yep.
And if I was a Joe, it's like a third of the time it's going to be bats. I mean, Larry Hama has not used bats a lot in the comic, whereas if you watch the cartoon, like in season 2 in 1986, the bats are in like every episode, to the point where you start to wonder why they even need Cobra soldiers and regular Vipers.
They have been a lot in the comics during this latter run. Well, I mean, across Hammer's run, I'd say, but was more towards the back end of this. That not too long ago there was a massive factory of bats that were found in, I want to say Darklonia.
Okay, right. Thank you.
By Bomb Strike and Co. And before that there was also Black Major and Red Laser were overseeing a big bat sort of production as well. So I think bats have very much been around as a big Cobra presence. So yeah, if there's Cobra, to find bats shouldn't be too much of a surprise.
Yeah. So at the bottom of page 5, a garage door opens up. The Joes are taking fire, and a Stinger and a Ferret drive out at us with several silhouetted characters on it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, those are probably bats. I mean, what I really thought was, oh, whoever this is, I'm not supposed to find out until the next page. This is supposed to be some kind of surprise for the Joes, for me, the reader, or both. It's going to be like Blue Ninjas, or like Dreadnoks that we weren't expecting, or the Black Major, or Firefly and some ninjas, or bats, or like brainwashed civilians. Like whatever it's going to be, it's going to be a surprise. But since there hadn't been heat signatures, I thought, oh, it's probably bats. I like the fight is great in this issue, and that some of it's very close. They're like, the bats are within 5 feet of them as they're shooting them point blank, taking cover right behind these two Cobra vehicles. There's up and down. I mean, literally up and down, because there's helicopters and there are missiles fired, and someone jumps off a helicopter. There's good kinetic action in this issue of this action comic, and then we get the reveal of who Kawbra is. So overall, I was a little thrown when we got to the final page and there wasn't the closure that I thought we would have. And again, I thought, okay, well, Larry Hama writes this comic for the first 155 issues and for the next 150 issues, one page at a time. He doesn't plot ahead of time, and he doesn't know how an issue is going to end as he's writing pages 1 and 2 and 3. And so, whether it's his idea or the editor's idea to have a 5-part story, there's a good chance that part 5 is not going to have the wrap up that one might expect from a 5-part story. It says to be continued at the very end, and rather than be disappointed, right? It's like, I know these are the rules of this comic going in. It's like reading Uncanny X-Men in the 1980s. It is an ongoing soap opera, and some plot threads are gonna, Colossus is gonna disappear into the Siege Perilous, and we're not gonna see him for a year or two.
So it's five. It's part five of an arbitrary part five-parter that was decided up front, but it's also issue 285 of an ongoing series where it's being made up as it goes along. And yeah, I mean, we've got a tiny bit of closure in terms of the sort of face
Sherlock
being revealed of,
and Sherlock getting to punch the guy.
Yeah, Sherlock gets to punch the guy that blew off her arm in part one. So sort of a tiny bit of closure on that part, but the ongoing story continues, and a new sort of mystery is kind of opened for us.
But as we brought up with part 2 or 3 or 4, right? Writer Larry Hama posted back in January of 2021 that he was changing the story based on what actually happened in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, because there's a scene in this story that takes place in the Capitol, and I have wondered ever since that foiled assassination attempt was it part 3? I can't remember. Part 2.
Yeah.
Part 2. How much did that change that chapter, and then how much does that change everything that comes after?
Mm-hmm.
And then again, like I can't say this clearly enough, like whether it was editor Tom Waltz's idea or Hama's idea to have a 5-part story called Murder by Assassination, Larry Hama probably didn't know when he was writing chapters 1 and 2 and 3 if indeed the assassination wasn't something that was supposed to happen in chapter 2 and then got changed because of real world news events. Larry might have been like banking on his ability to come up with a murder by assassination in chapter 4 or 5, and there was always a chance that was not going to happen. It's like the Cobra's venom. Like that story. I mean, that was really just a prologue to Dr. Venom comes back. And there are some, and that's the then culmination of the Blue Ninja storyline, right?
Well, part of a culmination. It introduced a brand new Storm Shadow ninja bot, which they had actually kind of forgot about for the last part of the story. So he sort of disappeared off panel, and we've not seen him since.
Right. Okay. And right after the Cobra's venom is artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so these titles as like frameworks for 4 or 5 issues are loose. And like the Cobra Civil War, I don't know that it would have worked as well or been received the way that it was if in 1988 and the editor had said to Hama, or like someone at the Marvel bullpen had slapped like Cobra Civil War part 1 of 6 on the cover, because that story, it goes 5 or 6 or 7 issues depending on. Anyway, so this is not the ending I was expecting, but I also I know to expect the unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anyone could have predicted this would be the issue that we got, or the reveal that we got, or that we'd I guess that it would continue, I guess, in the way that it now clearly is as well. So if nothing else, you expect the unexpected, and you will inevitably get it as well.
And I am not, every chapter of this was very different from the previous chapter.
Mm-hmm.
We even remarked that chapter 1 felt like another Untold Tale, or another like quote special missions issue, and this one felt like that also. This felt really self-contained, and as tantalizing as the title "Murder by Assassination" is, I think this book would do better without titles and arcs. But maybe it's a sales tool, and if it has to have a title, maybe it's vague, or maybe it's more about the format. The way that Untold Tales is a title, but that's about the format. Like G.I. Joe One Shots, or if this story had been called Around the Globe, like, because that's what it is. It's like we're in Europe, and we're back at headquarters, and we're in DC, and we're in Southeast Asia. Like, oh, do you have Around the World or Across the Globe Part 4? Like, Al Khabra's in it. Mark, how do you feel about the reveal of Al Khabra?
I was very much sort of looking forward to and expecting some sort of big reveal, and the reveal that we got was, much more understated, and I sort of did a bit of piecing back the jigsaw of the breadcrumbs that we've been fed so far across the piece. So yeah, if you bear with me, I'll sort of I'll give you the breadcrumbs that we were given.
No, this is good.
Up to now.
I want these breadcrumbs. Thank you.
Okay. So 281, costume, blue headscarf, shooting minions, threatens Gyro Viper, shoots Vapor in the head. Consistency of shooting minions. Superhuman leap, is that a clue? Jump from the Aspid as it crashes. 282, costume, grey coat, hat, sunglasses, disguise at the Capitol. Killing minions, he snaps the Senator Lartner's neck. Superhuman leap, he leaps from the Senate floor up to the gallery. Other notes, he uses a carbon fibre blade to get past the metal detectors. Al Khabra clue, he says to Sherlock, "You're cocky for a mere MP sergeant." He recognises her, and then she says, "I've heard that voice before." Suggestion that Sherlock recognises him from the previous issue? Or somewhere else. 283, costume, back with the blue headscarf. Killing minions, he orders that the buyers in his weapons deal are shot. Superhuman leap, none, but he does make a speedy getaway via trapdoor. Other notes, Al Khabra is a big-time weapons dealer. 284, costume, blue headscarf, followed by a suit at the end of the issue, similar to the one that we saw in 282. Killing minions, he shoots the customs inspector in the head. Al Khabra clue, he has a strange taste in pizza toppings. And now 285, costume, blue headscarf, killing minions, he shoots the Techno Viper in the head and attempts to shoot Overkill. Superhuman leap, he leaps from a crashing Aspid. Again. And Al Khabra, linkage to previous appearances, he boasts about taking Sherlock's arm off. So we've got sort of some, the question mark is this all the same guy? We've sort of got some commonality about, Sherlock recognising him recognising Sherlock. We've got General leaping about the place in a fairly superhuman way. And we've also got this penchant for trying to shoot his minions in the head. So when he's revealed, I had kind of this lingering doubt, that when Sherlock said, "I've heard that voice before," that she could have meant another time. So is there something else sort of connecting back to the past? Don't know. And in this issue, when Sherlock reveals Al Khabra's face, she says, "What? You're not," and then is cut off. So it potentially indicates that she has someone in mind as to who Al Khabra could be. Is she, a specific person there? But equally, she could have been saying something else totally different as well, like, "What? You're not Middle Eastern," or something like that. We won't find out because Fred cuts her off. So it's not any of the people that we were speculating about. He's got a face of a Fred, but does that mean that he's no one, or does that mean that he could still be anyone potentially? Because a Fred, has plastic surgery to make them someone new, but they previously had a life before. So, could potentially Sherlock recognizing his voice mean that it's harkening back to someone that she's encountered before, and then the surprise of the reveal means that she doesn't recognize his face, and the voice and the face don't go together. Maybe. And then we talked about this, speculation that, the characters it could be. And it was Chuck who said that, maybe Hammer could do a Devil's Due and just make him some sort of really obscure character from the past, like Devil's Due might be doing, and reaching back into sort of, an obscure character and pluck him out. And we saw that a little bit, but in the form of a new character by Overkill being introduced instead. So we kind of got, I think, a slightly different reveal, but at the very end of this plot, but it was by introducing a new character rather than necessarily resolving it all with the unveiling of Kawbra.
Something that you sort of alluded to there is that if Kawbra is a Fred series clone, could there be more than one Kawbra? So it feels like, they all shoot minions in the head and jump. So the suggestion is that it's just one person. But if you've got, 100 Fred clones, and your commander making this happen behind the scenes, or a very hungry Fred clone, you could have 5 or 20 other Fred clones just put on those glasses and call themselves Kawbra, and you could have this sort of like the legend and the specter of this arms dealer, terrorist, bad guy who sort of gets from point A to point B really quickly. It's like, well, I'm in Africa, I'm going to stop being Kawbra. Other Fred, you're in Europe, start being Kawbra. Or so that you make a good point that Sherlock seems to recognizes the voice, but is surprised that this person isn't who she was thinking it would be, that could either be something embedded in the story that we have experienced or something from her backstory that we haven't read. I was a little disappointed that it was, finger quotes, just a Fred when I actually got to that page. But I also thought that so much of the Marvel IDW G.I. Joe soap opera and mythology is built around these long-running characters, reveals, and misdirects, right? Where, like, all of the Crimson Guardsmen are Freds. Like, that blew my mind as a kid. And I think I might be bitter is too strong. I think I might be sort of grumpy enough as a comics reader that if I read that in a G.I. Joe comic now for the first time, I'd say, oh, come on. And it's only where Hama expanded on it. Mark, help me out. It was maybe 20 issues ago where a bunch of other different, like, Kawbra clones, they're not just Freds, there's like other names.
Oh yeah, they've sort of alluded to different.
It was like
what would you call
Richards
it?
And
Variants
Wendy's.
Yeah.
They had other names.
Different series of of CGs.
Yeah,
and you're using the word clone, and I know that you don't mean clone, but because the Freds have been established as being people with their own identities who then have surgery to replace their face to look.
I mean clone in the most generic sense. So the fact that this is, finger quotes, just a Fred, actually makes a lot of sense. And the question is now, where does the story go with it? Because Freds are really interesting to me, but the one or two that take over the story, like Fred the Seventh and Fred the Eighth, or is this really the beginning of something that could be bigger? In which case, maybe it was less about Kawbra as a mystery and more about digging back into this very G.I. Joe. I don't mean trope here in an insulting way. I mean, just as a topical theme. Like, oh yeah, it's a Fred. Like, well, what's going to happen with this Fred? I wouldn't be surprised if, all right, so they've captured him. I would not be surprised if on the 3rd page of the next issue, Sherlock gets a phone call and she's like, wait, that Fred just broke out of custody? And then, and again, this is just a sort of a parallel reflection of something I already said before. We don't know that Larry Hama knew who Kawbra was until part 5. I'm guessing he knew who it was earlier than part 5, and we could ask him, but it could have been one character and then he changed his mind, or it could have been like, well, it's going to be one of these 4 characters and I'll see where the story goes, or it could have been like, Yeah, I'm just it's someone mysterious, and it might have been like an all new like fictional head of some sort of real world terrorist group. It could have been, Firefly. It could have been, some random like who's the pirate? Sally?
Sally Sarawak.
Sally Sarawak, right? The way that she got pulled out of one story from 1986, 1987, like Al Kawbra could have been, if like the wind had gone a slightly different way, like Hama's like typing it on a Wednesday afternoon on a computer in one room versus like thinking about it while like cooking dinner on a Thursday evening in a different room, right? It might have been like, oh, there's that, like Tyrone comes back from the dead. Remember Tyrone? So, if I'm giving the story and Hama a lot of latitude to like stumble or not be tight or like narratively pack a narrative punch, I think that's sort of part of reading this comic. Like there's some rules for this comic. Like some stories are going to end really definitively, like Special Missions 4, like Special Missions 29. And some stories are not, like Murder by Assassination Part 5.
Yep. And I think, we're saying in inverted commas, he's just a Fred, but I suspect that there's story to come, which will mean that he's not just a Fred. He's he's a complex character with a past which somehow interconnects with Sherlock or something along those lines. So we shall see if there is more to this Fred than meets the eye.
I do wonder if having it be a white American who was in disguise as someone Middle Eastern, like part of me wonders if that is taking a less interesting narrative road. But I also realize that Hama reads the newspaper, reads a lot of books, like knows politics and history, and so it's not a cop-out, it's a choice. It's not like, oh, it'd just be easier if I keep it like a white guy, since like a lot of G.I. Joe is like American and European. It's like, no, plenty of G.I. Joe takes place in the Middle East, and if creating fictional narratives of heroism and villainy in the context of like the real world geopolitical instability of that place is a challenge for G.I. Joe, Hama is up to it, and I think this is a choice. But his name definitely, Al Kawbra, like, oh, who is this going to be like something like ISIS or Boko Haram in the real world, but now in the G.I. Joe universe, that's either a competitor of Cobra or some kind of like the Red Shadows, some kind of team that helps Cobra, like the Blue Ninjas. I think I was hoping for that, but I'm always ready to be surprised. Oh, it's a Fred. Okay, well, where's this gonna go?
So we didn't quite get the reveal on Al Kawbra that we were expecting, but we instead get a new mystery about this character that he's working alongside. So Overkill, who has a background of being, in the toy world, the Bat Leader. So he's released in 1992 originally as part of the Talking Battle Commanders as a sort of rather garish looking character. They've not gone for that same design. They've instead gone for, in the published book, a character that looks very much like Ghost Bear, which was a figure released in 2004, packaged with the Pulverizer as part of the Valor versus Venom line. He's a mercenary, Ghost Bear I'm talking about now. Ghost Bear is a mercenary and is Quinn's son. And Andrew Griffith actually posted a picture of his original design for Overkill. And in his design, he looks very different to the published version, which is very grey. In the published design, he looks very much like a V1 Viper. He's got the black boots, the blue trousers with red piping up the side, a blue top with a red Kawbra logo. He's got a much more pronounced robotic right arm, the red robotic eye, metallic mouthpiece, but most of the face and scalp, where there isn't hair, is actually skin tone. So at some point, either a coloring decision or an editorial decision, they've decided to go a different way in terms of how this guy looks. Maybe the similarity to the Viper was too on the nose. It kind of put me a little bit in mind of the look of the V2 Mercer, who has this his right arm looks somewhat robotic. Potentially the toy is sort of covered in a kind of chainmail or something like that. But again, you've got some of these sort of touches of blue trousers, black boots, black top, and sort of red piping and detailing, which is I think supposed to put you in mind of the Viper, given that he's meant to be an ex-Viper.
If I can slightly restate something that you have stated for our listeners who may not be reading the comics currently or not know a lot about 1992 figures. So the original Overkill has never appeared in the Marvel IDW Larry Hama G.I. Joe comic. And
Right.
So the fact that he's showing up here is a very interesting surprise, right? So separate from like, oh, Kawbra gets revealed and also here's Overkill. It's like, whoa. Hey, everyone, it's 2021 and Overkill first showed up in September of 1991 in the what I call season 4 premiere of G.I. Joe, what a lot of people would call G.I. Joe series 2, season 2, right? The Deke episodes. And he is a robot, right? Like I can't state clearly enough how exciting and disorienting this appearance by this character is, because if this is vintage Overkill, not only are the colors wrong or different, not only is the costume very different, although the face and head feel somewhat analogous, this is his first appearance. And that's actually 30 years ago. And then adding to the confusion or mystery or excitement, as Mark alluded to, Andrew Lee Griffith posts this drawing of his Overkill design, and it's the same design that we see in the published issue, but the colors are different. And absolutely, it looks like Mercer version 2. It looks, if you squint, you'd think it's like a Viper without their helmet. And so then the question is, okay, are Hama and Griffith actually introducing the original Bat Commander from 1991, 1992 in some pre-robot version where, maybe there'll be an explosion and his brain gets put into a robot body or something, and then we see that full costume design, with like garish red and orange gold and green and black from 1991, 1992. Or is this the 2018 action figure that was part of the action figure subscription service from the fan club or the website, right? And that Overkill doesn't look more like this guy who we see in the new issue. Or so is it 91, 92 Overkill? Is it 2018 Overkill? Or are Hama and Griffith just coming up with a new character?
Yeah, for sure.
And calling him Overkill, and because we need to find meaning, start assigning similarities and connections where there may not actually be. Hama has very little. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm looking at a picture, and apologies everyone. The 2018 subscription service figure is an update of the 2003 G.I. Joe versus Kawbra 2-pack, right? Where the sort of the things that most make Overkill are these two figures black and teal, and he's got a big red sort of scarf handkerchief around his face, and it drapes down onto his chest, right? So, but maybe Hama and Griffith are just coming up with a new guy, and that's a cool name, and that's a cool name that they came up with sort of coincidentally, or that is available in the G.I. Joe pantheon, and it actually doesn't connect to any of these characters.
And so, I think they've gone for saying we've got a cool name, we've got this idea of a Bat Commander, but we don't maybe like the idea of it being a robot commander in the original design. So beyond that concept of the name and the idea of there being a Bat Commander, we'll just do something completely different.
Right.
What I'm sure they are definitely not doing is trying to do a repeat of the use of the Devil's Due Overkill, which had his own backstory that was introduced by Devil's Due. So I'm entirely sure that whatever they do, they won't be recycling that story. But the mystery that I had sort of ties into our speculation a bit on who Al Kawbra could be. And now I'm thinking, who is Overkill? And I'm going to recycle a theory, which is that Overkill might be Billy, right? That Billy died. Before he died, he had a robot leg. This new Overkill is clearly part cybernetic, and could the dead Billy that Kawbra Commander was incredibly grief-stricken about have been somehow been brought back to life using Bat and possibly Blue Ninja technology to make it restore him back to life, but very much a cyborg version of the character, and maybe that's a mystery. Potentially, that's who this could be.
As much as I want this to be someone, as much as I'd like this to connect, I'm also happy for characters to not come back from the dead. So Billy, cool, good guess. If this is just someone else or someone new, also cool. Do you have any guesses for how a Fred can have such powerful jumps, or are you reading too much into the fact that it's an exciting comic book, and the Joes jump off helicopters sometimes, and from one desk to another in the U.S. Capitol?
It's hard to say, isn't it? It was part of that, I guess, was the speculation that if Fred was potentially someone like Billy with a cybernetic leg, then maybe that might explain quite how well he was able to jump about. Maybe he's just really good at jumping, and it's a comic book, and I shouldn't worry too much about the fact that he does seem to do a lot of jumping.
Maybe in a previous story, his code name was Jumper. And no, okay.
Shall we talk about? So we've got the sort of story wrapping up in some ways, but we've also got a new mystery being set up, which is the mystery of the construction bats, or BATs, as a lot of people want to say. What are they doing in the jungle? They need to get them to the port. I think the Kawbra said, are these 4th or 5th generation bats? I'm not counting. I don't know if you are, but there seems to be a few generations of them. But it's they're introducing a new plot around these bats, and it does seem to be one that they're expecting to follow up on.
So I've talked a lot about wanting to see characters sort of in their costume, or in sort of the right costume for the moment, even if it's the wrong costume. Like if Gung Ho's in the Arctic, I don't want him wearing a full white polar suit. I want some version of his hat or his his vest, right? It has to somehow say Gung Ho. And even though I don't like the version 2 bat, action figure, and I don't like how they look when they show up in the Andrew Wildman issues around 128. There are now enough bat toys that if you're going to have a variation of a bat, either because it's construction or because you're calling it like 5th generation, I do think it'd be really fun to draw a different bat rather than the 1986 bat. And similarly, there's this page where it's page 13 where a bunch of bats get shot, and then Overkill says, "All specialized construction bats into the aspids. We need to get you to," as you just said, to the port. And we see 4 bats walking into a container, and their arms are sort of beefier than normal. And then in the next panel, he explains, all their weapons have been removed and replaced with tools. They are useless in a fight. And I thought, oh man, what a bummer that we didn't have a slightly different angle on this panel where they're walking away from us, or we didn't have sort of one additional panel or a different version of a scene. Like, okay, if you're going to mention construction bats, I really want to see them doing some constructing, or like finishing doing some construction with these arms. And, you know, the original bat toy has that giant claw, and I don't remember the Rod Wiggum issues where the bats actually show up in the 40s, I think, but or maybe it's the 50s. But I don't think we've really seen the like giant claw from the 1986 toy in this comic. And so I so wish that, one, these bats looked more different because there are now so many different bat toys, and 2, that we could see those arms better, and 3, that Jay Brown would take the opportunity to color those arms differently to make them that much more clear, just in this one panel where they're walking away from us into this container, so that they look more like construction-y, like yellow or orange, just the arms. And while I'm complaining about color choices for bats, on the previous page, this is page 12, in the second panel, bats are coming at some Joes point blank, and they're shooting at each other, and there are some great sound effects. Brap, 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 poom. And Jay Brown colors the bat faces and chests and shoulders the same. And so there's this weird, like, sort of cloning of this, like, silvery round shape on the top of the page, because there's a second wave of bats behind the first wave of bats, but we just see their chests. And part of the excitement of the original bat toy was this amazing lenticular sticker on their chests, right? It's like what we used to call informally wiggle, right? Like you wiggle it back and forth and the image slightly changes in perspective. And the wiggle image on the 1986 bat, that's a drawing that Ron Rudat did, which like got figured out in Texas, right? Like to make that sticker, that was an extra step for, and it's on Lightfoot's little tank too, right? It's It's an extra step. That's an extra expense, and it makes the bat so cool. My brother and I were so excited when we each got a bat, and so like, Jay Brown, please put a little bit of that fun color in the chest plates of these bats when we can see them, and then notice what happens in the color on the next page. This panel where the bats are walking into the container ship. There's all this fun color in their backpacks, and yet no, it's their backpacks that are all black. And it's their chests that have little glints of red and orange and green. So in my character design, storytelling, and color choice, these 2 pages were very they were. I had a lot of anxiety reading these 2 pages. I mean, like not anxiety, like what's gonna happen, but like, oh man, come on.
Yeah.
But
I was anxious for the Joes, for blooping their frags at the bats with barely a meter distance between themselves, and
which actually reminds me of a question that I have. A couple pages later, the Joes fire missiles from the back of the Stinger at the Aspid, and 2 XO4 missiles left on the Stinger. I bet they're heat seekers. Foosh. Great lettering. Great shapes on those fooshes, which follow the contours of the the missile trails. I don't know a lot about heat-seeking missiles, but I feel like I've read stories or seen movies where someone fires a heat-seeking missile, but it needs a certain amount of distance before either the missile can before it can arm or before it can actually like register the heat signature. So when I got to this panel, I wondered, wait, is that aspid too close? Is the missile just gonna like bounce off it, or like go past it and blow up? But then it blows it up, so that's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
So the answer to my question is no. The heat-seeking missiles on the back of a Stinger do have a heat lock from the moment that they're launched, and yes, they are armed short range.
Okay, I feel we've been bouncing about all over the place, but I think I've said the things that I wanted to say.
I'd one or two more sort of I had one more badass things to point out. Two panels after this panel with the bats walking away from us that I'll never stop talking about. Two panels away, Kawbra tries to shoot Overkill in the head. Very close. Nobody disobeys me and lives. Blam. Kaping! Not everybody has steel implants in their skulls like I do. Okay. One, maybe this does suggest a backstory. You know, like did Billy get shot in the head? But also, man, that's cool. A Joe bad guy just got shot in the head, not quite point blank range, but very close range, and it bounced off. Right? That's cool and exciting. So some bad assery added to that character.
And and also, you know, Kawbra, he's at it again, trying to shoot his underlings in the head. Come on.
Yeah, I wonder what Hama's thinking is there. If sort of at the very beginning he thought, like, well, I just need to make him a really vicious, terrible villain, because I really like this thread where he's sacrificing and disrespectful to Kobra soldiers, because I feel like Kobra's filled with terrible people, and I think we would see that sort of in the ongoing story, you know, more than just like in the cartoon where Cobra Commander is always yelling retreat, he gets away, and a bunch of generic Cobra soldiers get taken prisoner by the Joes.
But it gets his comeuppance as well, because the next panel, he gets thwapped across the room by Overkill with the back of his hand as he makes his escape.
So we know one more thing about Overkill, which is that he has super strength, right? This is not like comic book exaggeration, like maybe some Joes or Kawbra can jump a great distance, but Overkill literally backhand smacks Kawbra and he is pushed across the room. I have an error detected.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
On page 5, panel 2, this is while the Joes are starting to shoot at this this base right at the edge of the jungle, and Falcon's yelling, "Suppress that fire!" Sherlock is behind him and firing, and in this panel, the Joes, their fire is red and Cobra's fire is green, and there's clearly a gun blast beam that lines up with Sherlock's weapon that's behind Falcon that is colored green. So one of those green beams should also be red.
Yeah, and the angles of some of that fire sort of is a little bit dodgy as well, I think, in terms of where is it coming from. Particularly in that first panel, it looks like it's coming from behind Muskrat, you know, from the jungle rather from perhaps the towers. The error detected that I had was back in the hangar as Kawbra is making his escape. He says, "Heli Viper, power up that remaining aspid and get ready for immediate takeoff." And the person replies, "The Techno Vipers never finish securing the cargo container." But the person replying is a Techno Viper, so it sounds like he was meant to have been a Heli Viper.
I spy with my little eye.
In the world of I Spy, we talked about spying Ghost Bear, but it's actually Overkill. Crosshairs, oh no, it's Wetsuit. So Crosshair was one of the later additions to the G.I. Joe canon around about 2003, but looking very much like the way that Wetsuit is drawn here. Although in canon, I think we have established that Wetsuit does sort of dress in this sort of similar similar look when out of the sea. He has the floppy hat, whatever word is the correct way to describe that.
It's good that he dresses like this when he's out of his wetsuit, because in the cartoon, particularly in this episode Ninja Holiday, Wetsuit, when he's not in his wetsuit, wears a white button-up shirt and blue pants.
Okay.
Sort of looks like he's just dressing up as Shipwreck's friend.
Right.
Which as a kid I didn't mind. I think even then I sort of understood. Like, well, he wouldn't be walking around, like Saigon with a wetsuit on when like Sergeant Slaughter's in his shirt and pants.
We've got Recoil spotted here without his blue gun, and he's very much alive. Sort of whenever he's seen, I think a lot of people sort of go, "Hold on, didn't he die?" But he takes a hit all the way back in issue 113, in that issue where Sneak Peek dies. But it looked like it was a nasty wound, but never established that he died. So very much in the world of the living.
Do you have another one?
My final one is that once again I spy Al Kawbra escaping from an aspid that has been shot down. Just another one of his hobbies.
Maybe his previous code name wasn't Jumper. Maybe it was Aspid Jumper, Chopper Jumper.
Jumper.
In the right at the page right after this isn't quite an I Spy. The page right after Al Kawbra shoots the Techno Viper in the head, we see two aspids, and all the way on the right we see a vehicle with a big tire. And we see just a tiny bit of the front corner of it. And it looks to me sort of like a Rage, but I don't think the design quite lines up. It also sort of looks like the front of the Thunder Machine if you took the Gatling guns off. So this is less of an I Spy and more of a question. Do you think this is a G.I. Joe vehicle, or do you think this is just sort of a vehicle that you would see in a warehouse where you might have some cargo helicopters? But if it's a G.I. Joe vehicle, hey, that's fun.
Yeah, I wonder if something particular was in mind or not. Yeah, I wouldn't like to stake any guess just based on that picture and my own knowledge.
You know what? Wait, can we go back to where Al Kawbra says, "Heliviper, power up that remaining aspid," and the Techno Viper. I think Al Kawbra is talking to the Heliviper in the aspid, and I think the Techno Viper who's on the ground is correcting him. Like, but sir, we Techno Vipers never finished securing the cargo container, right? And then to add a few words, I think Al Kabra's dialogue would then be, "Forget the container, Techno Viper. I'm having the Heliviper leave without it, Mark." So actually, I don't think that's an error detected.
Yeah, sorry, it is.
I think the error detected is that whoever is in that aspid, if it's a Heliviper, I think his helmet wouldn't be blue. Aren't the Heliviper's helmets red? Can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the error is that the bubble trail should be pointing towards the pilot rather than towards the Techno Viper, because the Techno Viper there is talking in the third person. The Techno Viper's never finished. Blah blah blah.
I have a little thing to point out just for those of you who read this issue digitally. I don't think you're experiencing this. After the final page, there's a cover for next month. There's a 1-page letters page, and then there's a 4-page preview of a Transformers miniseries drawn by Agustin Padilla, who was the first artist on the IDW continuation of the Larry Hama Marvel run. Agustin Padilla drew the first, was it 5 issues or 6 issues before Shannon Gallant came on for a very, very long time, and Mr. Padilla's work looks good here. I'm still not the biggest fan of his work. I find it. I mean, it's not a good comparison because this is 4 pages with one talking Dinobot as opposed to 10 Joes and 5 Cobras. But I think his drawings are pretty good, but I think his storytelling could be a little clearer, and that goes back to a Transformers one shot that he drew 8 years ago. But just as a little synchronicity or coincidence, I'm reading this G.I. Joe comic and I turn the page, and instead of 4 pages of IDW ads, it's Transformers comics drawn by this guy who's drawn G.I. Joe. And there's often, maybe the point I'm making is, there's not a lot of crossover between the people. Andrew Griffith, yes, but
Andrew Wellman.
I mean in the modern era. Well, Mark Bright, Freddie Williams. Anyway, but I turn the page and it's as we're nearing issue 300, it's it's that guy who drew issue 156 through 160 or so.
Yeah. I have a hammer time.
Stop. Hammer time.
Time to beat the soles of your boots with my face. Sucking chest wounds, red ninjas, brain scanners, rubber oozes, blue ninjas. And then some more sucking chest wounds. Hammer time.
So we've got the whole team being introduced by name in the order that they're shown, which is always a joy to behold. We've got, I'm right behind you, Muskrat. Falcon, bring up the rest. I hear you, Wetsuit. Sherlock and Multo, tighten it up. What's shaking down, rock and roll? Come into a clearing, recoil, etc. So, a nice little recap, introduction, and explaining exactly who is on the team.
I see a Hama time. When the bats are deployed and they're walking towards the Joes, and the Joes are shooting the bats, and the bats are shooting the Joes, Falcon says, "They're attacking line abreast. That's to our advantage. Rock and roll, you and Wetsuit go right and left to bring enfilade fire on their flanks while the rest of us cover you." So, military tactic thing, and then Andrew Griffith draws it nicely and clearly, where the 5 Joes who stayed are sort of bunched up together and pinned down, and then from one side and from another, rock and roll and Wetsuit fire.
Unleash that enfilade fire.
Yeah. I think enfilade fire was Al Cabra's previous code name. If he was a character who had a code name, I think he.
The enfilade jumper.
Enfilade.
Yeah. Favorite line of dialogue?
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
Falcon and Sherlock are under a poncho, so they can look at this tablet or hologram thing, and he says, "What's that opening in one of the buildings? Can you zoom in?" And I don't know. I think he says it. The roof opens. Helipad hidden inside. And again, I think I say this every episode. This is Hama thinking through how a villain would be in a physical space, right? Or this is Hama reading an article 6 months ago, or reading a book 15 years ago, and it's oh yeah, in Vietnam there are warehouses where the ceilings are open because they have hidden helipads, right? And that just ends up being a very small part of this story, and it just is as window dressing and scene setting to give that much more authenticity to these Joes stalking through the forest. Just a small little thing that adds a lot. You could do that so generically, oh yeah, beyond the clearing there's some buildings, they have helicopters in there.
Yeah, and also it's doing a couple of things. It's sort of helping us when we get to that point later on in the story, when they make their escape with the aspids, that it's, you know, helping that thought process of understanding, you know, how things are happening and how they're moving, and, you know,
that aspids
it's already
are
been
going,
established that the
aspids are going to take off from inside this building,
and also it's sort of like just, you know, giving us a subtle, you know, update and reminder that we're living in the modern world, and the sort of the Joes are making use of some of the newer technology that's available to, you know, to them, that they're not just stumbling in blind through the jungle. They're you know,
it's not all radio.
Mine was what we alluded to before. We've got Kawbra with his penchant for shooting his underlings in the head. He's been called up by a techno viper. He says, deploying my specially modified construction bats as cannon fodder is stupid and a big mistake, Kawbra. You can't. He says, calling me stupid and telling me I can't do something is your big mistake, techno viper. Blam! Shoots him in the head. Now, Overkill, you're not making any mistakes, are you? Absolutely not. Good, then stay out my way.
I think because the ending wasn't what I was expecting. When I read the issue, I was a little disappointed. But in talking about it, and, you know, in a week, in a year, when I reread this issue, I will like it more. And it won't bear the burden of needing to wrap up this 5-part story in a certain way, because I've learned my lesson. You know, a G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero 5-parter, you know, like this would have been the same story if it hadn't had this title and these 5 chapters. You know, like, it's like, you know, what does Tom Waltz say in the in the letters page? Return in 30 days to bring you the first of 5 spotlight issues, all of which will serve to both advance the current storyline while simultaneously focusing on fan favorite characters, right? So, like, I can imagine a reader of this comic being disappointed by part 5 of this story, and then disappointed or thrown off that sort of part 6 of 5, you know, is like this sort of one shot, which is going to continue, and then like part 7 of 5, 8, 9, 10, 11 of 5, like the next 5 parts of this 5-part story are going to continue the story, but also spotlight these characters as sort of self-contained issues, and that is some kind of failure. And I think it's the opposite. I think it shows what a flexible writer Hama is, and if that's overdoing it, I think it's a testament to how organic this comic is in its publishing, because, like, at this point, I mean, there are very few comics like this, right? And there are very few comparisons in comics to be made, you know, like Lee and Kirby on 100 issues of Thor, Lee and Kirby on 100 issues of Fantastic Four, like Evanier and, you know, like you can name on 2 hands the number of runs where there's a writer and an artist who've done 100 issues. But when it gets to 150 or closing in on 300 issues, so I love that, you know, Hama says to Tom Waltz, like, I think I want to do some sort of spotlights on these characters, but maybe not like jump back in time and do flashbacks. Like, I think we should keep up with Kawbra and this mystery. Or, you know, Waltz makes that suggestion, and this does feel like, you know, Chris Claremont's run on Uncanny X-Men, where, you know, he starts it when he's younger, and it's sort of a surprise that he gets it, and for a time it is the most popular thing that Marvel publishes, and then, like, his connection to it ends, and then later he's invited back, and then, but in the case of Hama and G.I. Joe, that invitation back is sort of permanent or ongoing. So it's a sprawling, you know, the brand as the good guys and the bad guys, there are hundreds of characters. So I think the fact that the narrative lumbers about is in keeping with the population of the brand and like and how the comic has always been, you know, like 4 times a year you got to advertise, you got to use some characters from a commercial. It's like, oh man, I was doing this other thing and now I have to have half an issue in the Arctic, right? And there isn't that challenge now. It's not like introduce this toy. Now it's like, oh man, who should I use, or like how retro should this be, or maybe I should introduce some new characters because there's like no black woman on G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I do appreciate that comment from Tom Waltz about the current storyline being advanced, because as much as I enjoyed the Untold Tales arc and the quality of those stories, I do like to see the sort of the wider narrative being advanced, and particularly with all of these elements that have been set up. I do have a hankering to find out where the plot is going to go. You know, what's going to happen next with this Kawbra now that he's been revealed. How will, you know, these new Joes sort of be used in stories beyond the ones that we've seen before? What's going to happen next with Overkill and these mysterious construction bats? You know, what other threads that have been set up in the past few issues? You know, where are they gonna go, etc. So looking forward to see the ongoing threads sort of progressing.
If there was going to be a self-contained issue that is out of time, like a flashback, self-contained issue, I would rather that be a side series. Not that we're always going to get, you know, G.I. Joe special missions or silent option. If it's going to be in the story, I'd like it to be, you know, like 26 and 27, or is it 144? Yeah, or the flashbacks in the Snake Eyes trilogy, you know, which sort of were reflecting what was happening in the present day, and the Baroness is so angry at Snake Eyes. Those are particularly satisfying because they both reveal something and also move the story forward without, you know, like the Untold Tales last time around, pausing the story.
Okay, so we've not actually given any Yo-Joage to this yet, so I think now's the opportune time to do it. I think I'm probably in a similar mind frame to you, Tim, in terms of feeling a little bit disappointed that the story wasn't wrapped up, but you know, as I, you know, think about it, sort of, you know, the intrigue that has sort of been introduced and sort of some of the ongoing mystery, you know, I'm happy that this is just part of an ongoing narrative and it doesn't have to have a definitive full stop attached to it. So you know, still enjoyed the issue, still enjoyed the arc, and I hope that the threads that kind of been you know, and the mysteries that have been set up and continue to be followed up. So I think probably a 7 on this one overall.
I also give this a 7 for the same reasons.
And continuing that thread, I've actually got time here now for listener question.
Question: what did we ask this week? Let's find out as we speak.
So we've been talking about the spotlight issues that are coming up, and all 5 have now been announced. We've got 286 Spotlight on Storm Shadow, 287 The New Joes, Molto, Sherlock and Black Hat, 288 Falcon and Special Forces, 289 Dawn and Helix, and 290 the October Guard, which I particularly am looking forward to. And I asked our listeners over on the social media what you know, who they would like to be you know, have a spotlight shone upon them as part of you know, a potential G.I. Joe spotlight. So here are some of the reactions that garnered. So Stefan Miller said Recondo, or the lesser explored original Joes such as Short, Fuse and Zap. Carol, aka Richard Straw, Ripcord, star of the show for a brief while, then largely forgotten about. Yeah, definitely enjoyed the Ripcord story, though I think Larry has kind of described his arc as pretty much done. He's served his purpose. Magnus, the Lego master builder, said, "I will cast a vote for Tunnel Rat. How did the shorter guy from Brooklyn get into the Joe team? And why does the EOD guy carry such a big backpack, walk point, and carry the machine gun? Is he trying to do everything? Prove something to his teammates or to himself? Trying to redeem himself for some screw up early on?" Here's another good suggestion as well. What about Dodger, the lone Battle Force 2000 survivor? We haven't seen much of him since the war in Trucial Abysmia. It would be an opportunity to explore survivors' guilt.
Yeah. I have thought about, and this might be sort of diminishing returns because Hama he gets to pick, and there are too many characters to pick from. But there are characters who got to, here we're seeing Overkill maybe for the first time, if it's that 91, 92 Overkill. I've been thinking about some of the second year of DEF that wasn't released as DEF, like Mace. Was Mace ever in the comic? And the way that we got Sightline. So I've been thinking of actually newer characters who either got a toy in the early 90s who never showed up, or newer characters from I'm this isn't very fair of me. I'm not interested in any of the new characters from like 2002 to 2006 because I don't think I like a lot of those action figures. But we've had a who's the is it Tombstone? Who's the big black Kawbra guy who was introduced in like 2015 in a 2-pack? I'm always interested in another
interesting looking guy, isn't he?
I'm always interested in and he has a scar on his face, right?
Yeah.
I'm always interested in another individual Kawbra, not one of many Vipers, who is not sort of bogged down with like death and rebirth and cloning, like Venom, Dr. Mindbender, or even to some extent the Baroness, since she's escaped death, once. So Tombstone. It took me a long time to get a Tombstone. I'd like to see an issue with Tombstone. And if there needs to be some joke like Ghost Rider where they can't actually say his name in the comic because another publisher has that name, then that'd also be fine. But Hama has said a couple times, I think on Facebook, sometimes I write about whatever character is in front of me, like, oh, well, I had a toy of that character in front of me, and he has downsized in the last couple of years. He's gotten rid of many things, and I think I know he has one or two of the 3D Joe's posters with like a picture of every Joe from like 82 to 86, and certainly he can like go to Yo Joe or 3D Joe's, but every so often I've thought I should just mail Larry Hama a Tombstone.
I think that'll do it.
But also, that also could be like an unwelcome. Like, don't mail me crap. What, do you want me to sign this and ship this back to you? It's like, that's an intrusion.
No, don't do that.
But Tombstone, because cool. He comes in a 2-pack with Duke, right? So the sort of implication there is that he and Duke, like, they need to square off in the sort of story of the toy. Tombstone.
Okay. Cool. A few more we had through. Hit and Run, great action figure, judging from his file card, a difficult start to life, because I think his parents were killed in a hit and run, right? So some fairly dark origin there to his choosing that code name. Bart came in with Low Light. Just because you can don't mean you should. He shows a lot about his character. I'm a sniper at heart. There's that special missions issue where he knocks out the target with the butt of his rifle rather than using his deadly skills. Al Vega would like to see the original 13. Peter, aka Idiot Brain, that's an interesting nickname he's given himself. I'd like to see Kobra's leadership ranks fleshed out a bit, which currently seems like it's just Cobra Commander and Mindbender. So Tomax and Zaymot, Cesspool, Big Boa even. And Tombstone, I think, would be the one to introduce.
And Scrap Iron. And someone brought up Scrap Iron a couple issues ago on the letters page, and Hama said, And hey, all of you listeners, thank you for responding in the Facebook comments to Mark's question. It is only slightly harder to put that suggestion into an email to IDW than it is to type it into a response in Facebook in the Talking Joe page. So listeners, please send an email to letters@idwpublishing.com and put G.I. Joe or G.I. Joe ARAH in the subject line and make suggestions. Who would you like to see, right? Like, remember in the 80s, this book was getting thousands and thousands of letters every week. Paper letters, which is emotional and undeniable because it's in a big box, right? And nowadays it's getting not very many emails a month. And so the people who make this book are a little bit out on their own out there making this book. So let them know. Let them know what you want. And secondarily, everyone, it's time to start making suggestions for the 40th anniversary issue, which should be out in March or April of next year. And also issue 300, which should be out like 6 or 8 months after that. So everyone who's listening, please send 1 or 2 emails to the nice editors at IDW. A 2-sentence email is great. This doesn't have to be a big essay about how much the comic means to you or where you get it, although they read that too. But please make suggestions for who you want to see and tell them what you want to see for the big anniversaries coming up, because this comic is a big deal and we need to treat it that way.
Cool. I'll just wrap up with the final few we had through European Joes on Twitter. Tollbooth, what does he do when there are no bridges to be laid? Friend of the show, Paddy Lennon, said, out of left field answer here, but I'd love to see a series of special missions focusing on the vehicles and drivers. Hammer has given us some great one-shots with the Sky Striker. I want comics focusing on more vehicles. Ore Striker, Hydrofoil, Bug, Battle Barge. Wedge Cap said, Larry still owes us a proper Zartan origin issue. I wrote a letter about it early in the ARAH IDW relaunch days, and I believe he implied that he had one in mind.
Wait, who said that?
Wedge Cap.
Wedge Cap, please send another email to letters@idwpublishing.com. Please politely remind Tom Waltz and Larry Hama and nudge them.
Skinny Joe fan, General Flag, how does one get put in charge of the G.I. Joe team at such a young age? White privilege. Too much? Ron Joseph, character, Quinn, reason, because I like him.
Wait, is that Ron Joseph who drew some issues of G.I. Joe?
That's right.
Oh man, this story's half written already. I mean, not really, but I know who could draw that issue.
Yeah. There we go. And yeah, thanks to everyone for all of your suggestions and joining in. I've been sitting on some of those for quite a long time, so thanks for your patience. More listeners' questions as and when I decide to ask them.
Maybe, you know what? Actually, you know what? Maybe, Mark, maybe we can turn some of these listener questions. Why don't we type that up as an email and send that to letters@idwpublishing.com? Dear Postbox the Pit, we have a podcast. We had listener questions. Here are some characters people would like to see.
Why not?
And we can include their names so that they know that we're not just listing our own picks, but that, like Upside Down Cake 21 wants to see like Tombstone fight Duke, right? Maybe Tombstone and what's Duke's wife's name?
Oh,
Maybe they have a backstory.
Well, it's been hinted, hasn't it? My mind's gone blank on the name. Claire. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm thanking myself for my brain working.
I'll say it. Good job.
Cool.
But listeners, please don't let my threat of us sending an email kind of on your behalf talk you out of it, right? It's hard making comics, and it's really nice to hear from your fans and readers. So if you can hear my voice, please write a 2-sentence email to IDW telling them what you'd like to see in the G.I. Joe comic and which artists you'd like to draw the book. And if you're feeling like, the last 10 people who've drawn this book are all good, and it's not helpful to say, I like all 10 people who've drawn this book, get them all back. That's not unhelpful. That is helpful. Because if no one says anything, maybe the editor keeps thinking, I guess we have to find someone new because no one said anything good about the current person.
Oh no.
So please, 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 everyone.
Innuendo. Do you wanna do a quick innuendo?
I do.
This is how the story goes. Attention. At this moment, you are now listening to
Talking innuendo.
If you are offended by words like
Sucking, flesh wound. Willy, Pete. Balls, crystal balls. Hypno shield.
whatever, take the tape out now. This is not a pop album. And by the way, suck my
Grandmother's brick in a Prada handbag.
Tombstone. All right, I win, you lose.
Oh no, that's not the way it works. Okay.
I didn't say it suggestively enough. Hold on. Tombstone. All right, go ahead.
So this is the segment of the show where I read out some G.I. Joe names. They sound, to me a little bit dirty, but the hurdle to overcome is whether I can make my co-host titter. And I'm running out of names, so this is potentially going to be a short list.
Titter actually is the nickname for the Cobra Mamba, the same way that Trouble Bubble. Sorry, go ahead.
What? Where is this coming from?
I'm just trying to tell a joke.
Okay, right. Okay, microphones on, straight faces, ready to go. Okay. Fatal Fluffy. One for one.
For those of you who don't know, Fatal Fluffy's that's the second miniseries? Is that the third miniseries?
Your guess will be better than mine.
Second miniseries. Oh no, I think that's the Pyramid of Darkness because that's where the Joes have the space station. Anyway,
that rings a bell.
Zartan and the Dreadnoks are in space, and they have these Ewoks that grow up into dark gray wampas, and they take the Joes captive. It's great.
Yes, so that means that I've not used up my whole list, and potentially there is one last piece of juice to be squeezed out of the innuendo lemon.
But a year from now, there are all these new Joes.
Yeah.
With new code names. Sorry, you were saying?
No, I was getting to the end. I think that that's us done for talking about this issue and the various bits. Next time we will be covering more from Devil's Due. We're talking about the Frontline series. We've got a episode covering the first Larry Hama arc, and then we're back for the second arc, Up in Some Snowy Place, written by Dan Jolly, featuring a very different kind of G.I. Joe story, so it'll be interesting to talk about that one. And then back here, we will be covering the latest issue of G.I. Joe when it comes out, and that will be issue 286, which is due for release some point in September. Where can people find you, Tim?
Well, in person at my store, Hub Comics, in Union Square, Somerville, which is right next to Cambridge and Boston, Massachusetts, and hubcomics.com, and also Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and YouTube.
Hub Comics!
your local comic store.
Hub Comics.
In Boston to explore.
Hub Comics. Your local comic store. Hub Comics. Comics and much more.
Hub Comics in Somerville near Boston. Check out hubcomics.com for details.
Hub Comics.
And then for G.I. Joe stuff, realamericanbook.com.
Excellent. You can find us on all of the usual places. TalkingJoe.co.uk is the website that has all of those places. We have got Talking Joe, a G.I. Joe podcast on Facebook, Talking Joe on Twitter, Talking Joe Comics on Instagram, and Talking Joe Comics at Gmail on the emails. We're also on Patreon, so a big thanks to all of our backers, Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin, who are getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content. And that's us done. But remember,
Nobody beats Talking Joe, a real American podcast!
with a guy from England. Laters, potatoes.